Washing dishes. One of the chores given to my sister Ann and I was washing dishes. Soon I noticed that every time we began to wash the dishes, Ann would conveniently have to go to the bathroom and she wouldn't return until I had all the dishes washed. She did it every single time. Eventually I became wise to Ann's cunning ways, and the next time she took off for the bathroom, instead of continuing to wash the dishes, I stopped and waited for Ann to return. After enough time had passed for me to have finished the dreaded chore, Ann came walking back into the kitchen only to find all the dirty dishes still waiting for her. Day after day, washing dishes became so boring to Ann and me that we both began trying to find ways to weasel out of the job. Every evening we would play around and goof off instead of getting the dishes done. Daddy would keep telling us to stop goofing off and get the dishes done, but we wouldn't listen. Finally, Daddy would become so frustrated that he would give up and send us to bed, and he would wash the dishes. Daddy did this even after he had worked hard all day in the hot sun, and I know he had to be exhausted. Daddy should have tanned our hides, but he didn't. My spoiled younger brother. When my brother Dale was born, the doctor said he had a hole in his heart. Because of this, Mommy spoiled and petted him a lot. He could get away with a lot more than the rest of us kids. Dale took up the habit of telling tall tales and making up stories to get the rest of us into trouble. One day in the middle of July, as Mommy and Daddy were returning home from shopping, Dale ran outside to greet them with a big tale that our oldest sister Murray had made snow cream while they were gone. Making snow cream in July? I don't think he thought that one over. Dale was always bugging me to play with him, but I didn't like to, because if things didn't go his way, I wound up getting a whipping over it. He would always manage to hurt himself and then blame it on me. After several tales like this, me denying it, Mommy started sneaking around watching us play. She wanted to see for herself what was really going on. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Dale to get mad at me and deliberately hurt himself, then blamed it on me. Mom had caught him red-handed. This time he got the whipping instead of me. There was another time Dale was out in the yard throwing rocks. I was outside playing too and had gotten tired and wanted to go into the house. I asked Dale to stop throwing rocks until I got past him, and he said that he would. But as soon as I stepped in front of him, crack! I thought lightning had struck me. He had hit that bone beside my eye, and I still have the scar to prove it. Mommy started spanking him, and I wound up begging her to stop. That was one time Dale got a well-deserved whipping. Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday at our house was always a huge deal. I never quite understood what eggs had to do with Easter, but that was part of the tradition. Easter morning, Mom would cook a big breakfast, usually fried eggs, biscuits, gravy, and as many eggs as we could eat. She would boil lots of eggs and we would decorate them. After the eggs were hidden, all the kids would join in the egg hunt. And Halloween. My siblings and I always looked forward to Halloween because it meant one thing: free candy and lots of it. We excitedly painted our faces, put on old ragged-looking clothes, and headed out to gather as much candy as our bags would hold. We never worried about anyone bothering us back then. We would walk for miles and never thought a thing of it. By the time our candy collecting was finished, we were usually exhausted, but we always came home with bags full of candy. It was almost as good as Christmas. The time I fell in the creek. Oh, how I loved those times, those huge mountain snows we used to get in the wintertime. We would build a snowman, roll in the snow, ride makeshift sleds all day. We had some dandy snowball fights when the snow began to melt. We were always searching for icy spots or frozen ponds to skate on. I remember the winter of 1963 or 64 when I was 6 years old, when I fell into the icy waters of the creek and nearly froze stiff. The morning it happened, it was snowing like the dickens. The little path we walked to catch the bus was slanted and had icy spots on it, and when I got near the creek, I slipped and fell in. The shock of the water almost took my breath. I was glad that my neighbor and friend offered to walk me home so I wouldn't have to be alone. By the time I got home, I was shivering all over. My mom helped me out of the cold, wet clothes and into some dry ones. It surprised me that Mom actually let me drink some hot coffee to help warm me up. Anytime my mom called me sis, it made me feel all warm and cozy inside, because she rarely did that. Where's my chew gum? My baby brother Jesse had a hair-trigger temper. It didn't take much to set him off. When he was a baby, I thought he was the most beautiful and sweetest baby I had ever seen. I remember when Jesse was about 4 or 5 years old, he would charge our sister Sharon's boyfriend a toll to cross the little walk bridge that led into our yard. When Jesse saw Dana Lewis coming, he would be ready at the end of the bridge with a handful of rocks. He would holler, "Dana Lewis, you got my chew gum?" If Dana had the gum, he could cross into the yard without any problem. If not, then the rocks came flying. The red-eyed cat. One time, Daddy's sister, Aunt Mavis, gave Jesse a little kitten. One night he got out of bed and saw the kitten sitting on the washer. The light reflected in the kitten's eyes so that they looked red. Jesse started screaming and told Monty there was a red-eyed cat in the house. My Aunt Mavis teased him for a long time about the red-eyed cat. Canning time. In the summertime, my parents would tend a large garden. In late summer and early fall, we canned and dried much of the food we ate during the winter months. My dad also hunted a lot and would bring home rabbits, squirrels, groundhogs, and other wild game to feed us. Our family usually had a hog or two to kill in late fall to supply us with meat through winter. My mother and father would work from early morning until evening, hoeing corn and green beans. Numerous times we children were sent out to pick blackberries for Mom to can and make jelly with. Every year when the gardens were ready to be harvested and canned, that meant it was cabbage chopping time. The whole family had chores to do, and we all had to do our part. One of the chores given to us younger girls was to chop the cabbage heads up with a homemade chopper made from a cream can with one end cut off. There would be pan after pan of cabbage heads to be chopped for canning, kraut, and mixed pickles. I always dreaded that task so bad because my hands would hurt and get so tired from holding that cream can that they would go numb. There also seemed to be an endless number of canning jars to be washed, ears of corn to be shucked, and green beans to be strung up to dry to make shucky beans. We reaped our rewards when the little tomato tomatoes got ripe. We were allowed to pick and eat as many as we wanted, and I would eat my share. I will never forget hunting for the little ground cherries, also known as strawberry husk tomatoes. I can still remember the taste of them. In springtime, us kids went hunting for pokeweed to make what we mountain folk call poke salad. We also hunted for mushrooms we called dryland fish. Man, that was some good eating. Hunting pawpaws and persimmons. The fall of the year was a wonderful time for us kids. We would go out into the mountains looking for pawpaws and persimmons. Pawpaws, when ripe and ready to eat, are soft like a perfectly ripened banana. But we waited until after the first frost to go looking for the persimmons. When ripe, the fruit of the persimmon tree is soft, sweet, and delicious. But woe be to the one who eats a persimmon before it's ripened. You will be labeled as pucker mouth for sure. And hog killing time. Growing up, there was always something to do. Hog killing time was in late fall when the days turned cold, and it involved a substantial amount of work. On a cold, frosty morning, we would be up by daybreak, and Daddy would already have big tubs of water heating on an open fire to scald the hog's hide with when it was ready to be scraped. Hogs are covered with hair, and the purpose for scalding is so that the hair can be scraped off with a minimum of effort. Usually a .22 rifle was used to put the hog down with the least amount of suffering. They were usually shot behind the ear or between the eyes and fell to the ground immediately. Then the hog's carotid artery was stuck with a narrow, long blade butcher knife to empty the blood out. Most of the time there would be 2 or 3 men from the neighborhood to help hamstring the hog and hang it on a tripod. This helped with the draining of the blood and made it easier to dress the hog. Daddy always shared our hog meat with the neighbors who helped him with the task of killing and cleaning the hog and preparing the meat. Whenever we had fresh hog meat, Mommy would bake biscuits and make a big skillet of gravy. There's nothing like fresh hog meat, hot biscuits, and gravy. Snow cream. In the wintertime, when a good-sized snow fell, Mommy would make the family a big dishpan full of delicious snow cream. Dry, fluffy snow, when the temperatures are in the teens and below, is the best for making snow cream. Mommy would fill the pan with freshly fallen, fluffy snow, then add cream, sugar, and vanilla flavoring. That was our ideal of ice cream. One of the things I disliked most was the quilting frames Mommy would hang in the kitchen to make quilts on. At the time, I didn't realize that she was making those quilts to help us keep warm in the cold winter. Dancing while Mom's away. There was one thing that all of us girls had in common. We loved to dance. Our mother had read in the Bible about Jezebel dancing for John the Baptist's head, so she did not allow us to dance. But we did not see anything wrong with it. Whenever our parents were away, my sister Sharon would put on a record, and we all would start dancing. One day, while we were dancing and having a ball, we did not notice that our good time had caught the attention of our nosy neighbor. When our parents came home, the neighbor came out and informed them of what we had been doing before they could even get in the house. You guessed it, we were in hot water.